We're live streaming the board meeting again to YouTube.
Oh,
Hello.
hey,
Morning, Matt.
Hi.
Try. Hey, Nick, can you go to the county website and under the news, there's the May 19th board meeting. Can you check to see if the YouTube link is working?
Did you figure out whose computer was echoing yesterday? Ryan?
In the afternoon meeting?
Yeah.
It looked like 3 or 4 of them, and I think Dave just ended up muting everyone, so I'm not exactly sure what was going on. But we got Dave a headset because he's been pretty quiet with those headphones. Kind of hard to hear. So we got him a headset, so I think he's going to maybe use that today. So that might alleviate people having their volumes too loud. So
Oh, okay.
you know, Dave, when Dave talks, he is always quieter than other people.
Really quiet
So-
sometimes.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the issue. Then everybody has to turn the volume up to hear him. And then somebody else talks,
and it's too
causes
loud.
feedback.
So Dave, he did get a new headset. I delivered that to him this morning in his office. So
Okay,
we'll see if that helps.
Yeah, I noticed when he had his earbuds in, he was always quieter.
Yeah, so we're gonna hope to alleviate that today. So does it work or no? Perfect. Thanks, Nick.
Get all your planting done, Steve?
I got a few food plots left to do.
How about the big stuff with the
The big
beans?
stuff, we're done. We're done with the beans and the corn. At least on our little operation. My buddy that I help, is planning on selling his milk cows before winter. But just in case, he just planted enough corn for feed for them. And then the rest he did all beans.
How many beef does he have?
He's got milk cows.
Oh, milk?
He milks. He's like one of the old 40 cow milk herds. Got last guy in America left, like that.
Yeah, but those are the ones that can kind of be okay, aren't they?
I tell you what, there's not much cash there. They're just, yeah, he he can control his inputs because it's just him.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a guy to help milk once in a while at planting time, but otherwise, he doesn't have labor costs.
Yeah.
He's able to keep using equipment that he's had for a long time. So,
Yeah,
if you're milking 400 cows,
Yeah.
you gotta have bigger stuff and you gotta have hired help and it's harder to control your input costs, I
Yeah,
think.
and those kind of dairy operations pour the feed to them too, and then they milk them
Oh,
3
yeah.
times a day.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I know, like Mark, he just gets the tanker. A full tanker just goes right to his farm and fills up.
Right. See milk about 400,
Yeah.
and, and now those guys are the smaller end of the deal.
I don't know.
Now they're milking. Friend of mine, Harlan Matson from Candy, Ojai County, he said that his county now, he's had 250 cows since the late 70s, And he was a big guy when he put in that system. Now he's just a little tiny guy because everybody's got 1,600 cows they're milking.
Yeah, those huge commercial operations can really mess with the market too.
Well, they got, I mean, everything they got is, you know, they have to rely on so much help.
Yeah. Hi, Josh. Hi, John.
Hey, Josh. Hi, John.
Morning, Matt. Morning, Steve.
Good.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
You want to take Pine County Chemical Health? Okay, and then Josh, do you want to take facilities? Because I have a bunch of other stuff in front of me. So he's gone.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of annoying, man.
I know it's annoying. I'm on hold.
Can you put a muffler on or something?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Turn your volume down? That's very what it was. It just.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Got you, Josh.
Okay. Sorry, I had to get the phone code here. So my iPad, my microphone don't work. So I got to call in with my cell phone.
Hey, Josh.
Yes, sir.
Can you take facilities report?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Josh, you got to get that doggone bubble gum out of the microphone screen.
Yeah, I had Kent look at it yesterday, and he determined that the microphone's bad. So I guess
I don't
I'm
even
getting a
know.
new iPad as well.
I don't even know where the microphone is on the stupid thing.
Yeah, I don't know, but it used to work. It worked when we first started doing this, and I don't know. I've been fighting it ever since. So.
Well, at least you figured out the workaround.
Yep. At least for now. By the time we'll get a new iPad, and then we'll be back in person or something. But
Yeah.
I have a feeling this is going to go on for a while.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
when we get to the coronavirus update, We have two prepared speakers. We have Amy Isaacson from the courts and then Becky.
Yep.
Would you want to do Amy first and then Becky? Because I think that would transition that into the county board discussion a little more smoothly.
I gotta find it here where I wrote it down.
Is that an addition, Dave?
Yes.
I mean,
The coronavirus update has always been on the agenda, but we just have some specific speakers. With Amy Isaacson doing a update on the courts, and then Becky giving some background info.
Hi, Jackie.
Steve on the line yet?
Pardon me?
Is Steve Chafee on yet?
I have not seen Steve on here yet.
Yeah, he's on there.
Hey, JP.
I'm here.
Hi, Steve.
Steve, do you want to talk for just a couple more seconds, Commissioner Chafee?
Yeah. What do you got? What do you want? What do you want me to say? I'm here.
You know, I just got to rename your call-in user to the correct person.
Oh, okay.
We got you now.
Well, I have 10 o'clock. We will we'll go by Steve's Eastern Standard Time. We'll call the meeting to order. And first thing is the governor of the state of Minnesota has issued executive order 20-01 declaring a peacetime emergency and coordinating Minnesota's strategy to protect Minnesotans from COVID-19. On March 24th, 2020, Pine County Board of Commissioners declared a local emergency for Pine County. Based on these conditions, the Chair of the Pine County Board of Commissioners has determined that the requirements of statute 13D.021 subdivision 1 have been met, and it is not practical or prudent for members of the county board to meet in person. Members of the county board will join the meeting remotely. The public is invited to join the meeting remotely by phone. Or I believe now Ryan says we have a YouTube link. And you can live stream this meeting. Anyway, we'll rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of
America,
America.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Public forum. Is there anybody that wishes to speak at public forum?
Mr. Chair, this is Kelly Schroeder, County Auditor Treasurer.
Yes.
Yes, I was just hoping to note that today is the start of the filing period for state and county offices for the primary and general election in November. So we are close to the public, obviously, and so we're encouraging folks to contact myself and request the materials, or you can go on the Secretary of State's website, or I also have created a Pine County webpage that has all of the materials on it as well that can be downloaded. And then you can mail in the documents or put them in the Dropbox, and with the fee, with the filing fee as well.
Thank you, Kelly. I was, for some reason, wondering about that when I was making toast this morning. So thanks for that update. I see we have Representative Nelson on a call. And we'll probably ask him during our reports if he is still around to give us some feedback and a little discussion, if that's all right. I'm not hearing any other. I see call-in user 5 and the caller user 4. I'm not sure who they are, Ryan, but I don't hear anybody speaking up. We will move on to the agenda. We have a few additions. David, do you want to give those to us?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have, in addition to consent agenda item number 8B, a new hire, part-time corrections officer Sean Mitchell, effective June 2nd. And then we have some additional information for regular agenda item number 4, the Pine County Sheriff's Squad body camera update. And we have some additional information for regular agenda item number 5, summary of activities for the U of M extension update. And then we have some additional information for regular agenda item number 6, the coronavirus update. And we have Amy Isaacson, the court administrator, who will provide an update on the court's activities, and a PowerPoint presentation by Becky Foss on the coronavirus. And then the rest of that will be a discussion by the county board of direction for county facilities. And all of that additional information is posted on the county website for anyone who wants to review that information.
Ludwig will move as amended.
Morrow second.
Any discussion, questions? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
District 3, Commissioner Chafee.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner Mickrick.
Aye.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. We will move to the approval of the minutes for the May 5th, 2020 County Board minutes and summary for publication.
McRae will move.
Motion.
Morrow second.
We got a motion by McRae, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? Did you have a point? Okay. Clerk will call the roll.
District 4, Commissioner McRae.
Aye.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
District 3, Commissioner Chafee.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. We'll move on to the minutes of boards, reports, and correspondence of the Pine County Extension Committee of February 20th and the Pine County Zoning Board of February 27th.
Someone's got a radio.
That was a long one. We're looking for a motion for that.
Ludwig will move.
McRae second.
Discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Chafee.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner McRae.
Aye.
All right, that passes. We'll move to the consent agenda.
Commissioner Moore will move the consent agenda.
Second, McRae.
Got a motion by Moore, seconded by McRae, on the consent agenda. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
District 3, Commissioner Chafee.
Yes.
District 4, Commissioner McRae.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Facilities Committee. Who's gonna take that, Josh?
Yeah, I was just pulling up the minutes, sorry.
All right.
So we did have a meeting. Looks like, what did we discuss? I'm just trying to figure it out here. Okay, the COVID-19 update. So we did discuss, with this shutdown potentially coming to an end here fairly soon, how the county is going to responsibly open our facilities, having the right equipment, safe, having the disinfecting and the hand sanitizer and some plexiglass in the spaces that people are going to need it. I don't think the plan is to move right at 100%, everybody back in the courthouse. We're going to just try to phase it in. The people that can still work remotely, still do that and get some people in there to open the doors and that kind of stuff. We also did talk, that was just real quick on that. If anybody's got any questions, I can answer that or Matt can, but we did also talk about long-term space planning. So right before all this went down, we actually interviewed some architects to possibly put a annex on the new courthouse, and so we could get everybody on the same facility. Well, same week we interviewed architects, this all happened, and we had to have everybody start working from home. Now we have, I can't remember exactly how many working from home, but it seems to be working pretty good. We did a little bit of digging and trying to figure out about how many people we would have to have permanently work from home or out of our spaces to have everybody in the same facility without having to build anything or without having to have a second facility like the South Pine Government Center. The magic number seems to be about 30. That's about 22% of 136 employees that are currently, I believe that's currently working remotely. David, if I'm wrong, step in. But that seems to be a pretty realistic goal. Yes.
Just that 136 really represents the group of employees that would be in play at the South Pine Government Center, the main floor of the courthouse, and the North Pine Government Center. And so some of those 136 are currently still working in the office because we need some people in the office, others are rotating in the office, and most of them are pretty exclusively working from home. But that 136 is that group of employees who are in play as we look at how do we arrange space to bring everyone in Pine City to the courthouse and make that work, because we may have some employees up at the North Pine Government Center who can continue to telework and then potentially relocate some workers from the Pine City facility to the Sandstone facility. But as you indicated when you started out, these are just rough numbers to see if the math works. They're not specific decisions on any positions or employees.
Yeah. So I think the goal of the facility committee is, in our long-term space planning, is not to build another facility or add on to the existing courthouse. It is our plan to figure out how to vacate the South Pine Government Center and find a tenant for that. And we're openly communicating with the city about them taking it over. Then working on getting some people working remotely and or transitioning in and out of space, so some flex space, and getting everybody back up to speed at the courthouse, the existing courthouse. So it's funny how a pandemic can change things. Just this is one thing with the teleworking that for us, we've tried it in the past and it's not really been hugely successful, but when you're forced to do it, it's been very successful. I haven't had all the updates as you guys have been having, but from what I understand, it's not perfect, but it is working. So if we can figure out, a few people that either want to or can work remotely on even a rotation or permanently, this could be a good thing going forward for Pine County, and we'll see how it goes. But we'll keep you informed, anyways. And then under project updates, Pete did complete some updated lighting in the courtrooms, in a couple of the courtrooms, and I can't remember for sure if he was going to do the third, but he did do 2 of the 3. And he was talking about like candle power in these courthouses was the threshold. It was like half of the threshold it should be. Now it's quite a bit above. So it was a pretty good improvement. I have never been in the courtroom, so I couldn't tell you before or after. Actually, I was in there once. Sorry, we did do a picture in there one year. So that's the only time I've been in them. Maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. I don't know. But and there was a few other things. They striped the parking lot at the existing courthouse. They've just been trying to get a bunch of things where when there's not a lot of people walking around and doing things, where they can open them up, work on them so they don't have to close it back up, and just getting a lot of cleaning and that kind of stuff done. So And I guess from there, Matt, did you have anything else to add?
No, you covered it great, Josh.
Sorry. If anybody's got any questions, hopefully I can answer.
Thank you, Facilities Committee. I think you've hit on a great plan and you got some support, I think, from the rest of the board to carry out how we can place workers going forward. Let's see, Personnel Committee.
Steve, you want me to take that?
Yeah, you don't have to. I just lost my screen. So. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
so I'm going to go through the whole thing and then make one motion at the end, just because of the way we have to vote. Is that all right with you?
That is perfect.
Okay, thank you. So we met on May 12th and made the following recommendations. Under Health and Human Services, we approved the PERA phased retirement option for Case 8 Betty Kozlowski, and that will begin June 1st, 2020, and it'll be ending no later than May 31st, 2021, at which time she will formally retire. And it's all in agreement with the employment and county policies and collective bargaining. Then moving on, we approved the hiring of a new health educator position and eliminating a Case 8 position in the public health department. Health educator grade is a 10 with a minimum hourly rate of $24.70. The increase in staff expense will be offset by third-party billing, and the number of FTEs in the public health will remain the same. Moving on to Sheriff's Office and Jail, we acknowledge the resignation of part-time corrections officer Preston Otterer effective April 22nd, 2020, and authorize the backfill of the position and any subsequent vacancies that would occur through internal promotions or lateral transfer. In Sheriff's Office Dispatch, we acknowledge the resignation of part-time probationary dispatcher Amanda Morris effective April 23rd, 2020, and authorize the backfill of that position and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. In the Highway Department, we acknowledge the retirement of County Right-of-Way Manager Todd Lindstrom, who has been there for, his retirement will be May 29th, 2020, and he has 37 plus years of service to the county, which that's a long run there. Backfill is not requested due to the recent hiring of the assistant county engineer who will fulfill the same role. The rest of the meeting was, it's in there, you'll have the notes, it's just informational data, but that's the important points. And I will move those, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Yeah, Commissioner Chafee, second.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions?
I do have one question. Is Todd getting his clock, or are we mailing it to him, or what?
We're gonna FedEx it
There
through
you
Mark.
go.
We'll put it in a dump truck and deliver it to his end of his driveway.
Maybe once we got we can have public meetings, we might have to have him come back to get it, huh? And his picture with the chair.
I think we'll try to work out something with him. That's a commendable number, 37 years. Wow. So we got any other comments? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Chafee.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner Mickert.
Aye.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes. We'll move on to the Health Insurance Committee. Matt, you up for that one too?
Well, I can start it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think probably the best way to start that is we're always trying to figure out how we can do the best with our insurance without having huge increases. And if I back up for a little history there, we tried to last year, and I think it started the year before that. We were having meetings with Resource, and we were trying to figure out a way we could do a 3-year agreement or something, and come up with some model so we could predict our rate of increase, which they seem to be all in on. Well, then earlier this spring or late winter, we had a meeting with them, and they had a good, I don't know, almost a year to work on that, and they came back with nothing. It's like they had forgot we even had that conversation. I'm not saying that, it's frustrating, and I know it's a difficult market, but anyway, so Dave and the insurance committee is a good cross section of our county employees and staff. And so we reached out to Justin, and we're looking at a lot of options again to try to figure out how we can get the best deal. So in our last meeting, we went through the health, the plan and the claims history and all of our insurance goals, and we even covered a new one to us, which was an introduction into self-insuring, which I think it's worth looking at, and we've made no decisions yet. We're just looking at that. I don't know. I'm a little nervous about that myself, but I think there's a way that could work. I'm not going to rule it out yet. I'm staying very open-minded. So anyway, we decided at the insurance meeting that as a group that we'd go forward, and he's going to research all possible options for us and put them on the table. So at least we'll look at everything that's possible for us in a way to ensure the employees of Pine County. So if somebody wants to add detail to that, feel free, David, or anybody else that's part of that committee. But that's just kind of the rough summary of what happened.
thanks, Matt. You covered it well. I'm just going to add a couple of things that I think we've come to the realization over the years that we can get as mad as we want at the insurance company for raising our rates 20%, 10%, or giving us a decrease. But it's a direct reflection of our usage. And the way we're set up now, we get a little bit of a buffer if we have really, really high usage, which would require a 20% increase. We pay it after the fact in next year's rates. If we look at self-insurance, we pay the rate that it goes up the year it happens. And so the thing that we save are the administrative costs, and I'm still need a little guidance of how much that really is. I think it's significant. I think it's way more than 1% of our levy, total levy. So that makes me wonder if this isn't part of a solution. Because like Matt said, what we're really looking for is to try to get some rate stabilization. If we can plan, nobody likes going into something thinking our insurance rate's going to go up 6 or 7 or 8%. But if we look back over some period of time, like a 10-year period, we're looking at it. We've had about a 7.2 or so increase per year. Some of those years we actually got a decrease. Some we had these horrendous increases. And so what we're looking for is if we had a crystal ball and we could predict that, we could say it's going to be 6.8% increase for the next 5 years. Then we can budget for that. It's a lot, even though we don't like the number, we can budget for it. And so I think it's the predictability factor that I'm looking for, and I think the committee is looking for.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think I'd like to go back to what you said, like when we talk about, you know, the claims base, it's based on our claim.
right.
You know, and I know we initially looked at this because they're obviously able to manage resources, just a middleman managing our stuff through to Blue Cross. So we thought, why can't we do that ourselves? So, and I agree totally with what you said. And I think what my realization was is we're always going to pay. So if we have a bad year, and you said it, we're going to, if we're self-insuring, we're going to pay it the year we have it instead of the next year when they up the rates and you're going to pay them. You're going to pay that freight. So the
Right.
dollars are going to cost you always pretty much the same.
The only way I see that we can save huge amounts of money is what? Lower the service that we get. So if we want to, and usually that means raising deductibles. And we've had to do that over the years, almost every year anyway, just to get it in some kind of a price range we could afford. So we've got a great committee. Like Matt said, they're a pretty good cross section of our employees. We are concerned about our employees. We think it's a good reason to work at Pine County because we have a good insurance policy, and we want to keep that in focus all the time because we care about our people that work here. Any more on that? Any questions on it? David, did we forget anything?
I think the update was pretty comprehensive. I would just add that Justin is looking at all of the options we have. So we're going to be investigating the self-insurance, but we're also going to keep on the table resources as an option and just doing a direct bid in the market, which we've done before as a way to better position ourselves to negotiate with resources. And so the idea is to develop information over the spring and early summer so that we can come back with some hard numbers and be in a position to make an informed decision versus just waiting until August or September when resources tells us the number that we have, and then we don't have time to make adjustments.
It's been the biggest single change that we have gotten in the last few years when Justin came on board is he's able to work those numbers, so we know kind of now what those numbers are going to be instead of knowing what those numbers are in the end of August and then never having enough time to put together an RFP and rebid the thing. So we've kind of moved the game ahead a little bit.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I got a question.
Yep.
So in any time I haven't been on the insurance committee, but I always paid attention. We've never had more than like a 1 or 2 year contract, right? Has it always
Right.
been? Okay.
I think-
I was,
Yep.
yeah, I couldn't remember because when we rebid, like we've done where we just go out and if we don't like the number, which we don't ever like the number, but when we go out and rebid, it doesn't void a contract that we had or anything like that, does it?
No, we're at the end of our contract now. So it's time to get something else. In the old days, we'd typically get an extension or a 1-year contract. We've really tried to get 2 years. We've asked for 3. We've had a hard time getting a 3rd year from anybody, but we've had pretty good success at least getting 2-year contracts, which gives us a little bit of a time to react.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. So has anyone heard the impact that this COVID-19 is having on insurance companies, and is that changing anything? I have heard nothing.
I heard early on that it was actually probably going to drive rates down a little bit, usage rates. But I think we're going to have to wait until we're at least into the end of the second quarter, which means that we're not going to know that completely at the time we got to go out for bids. They're going to use first quarter of 2020 and second, third, and fourth quarter of 19 for our rate structure.
Thank you.
Okay. Nothing else. We'll move on to the body camera, squad camera presentation. Jeff and Ryan, I think this is your show.
Yeah, Mr.
Got
Chair,
it.
members of the board, I think we can make this work. So Ryan's going to run the slides and I will try to keep up with him. So we'll take it from here. So yeah, we are at the point of, obviously you guys are aware we've been talking cameras for quite a while now. We put out the RFP and we're at the point of making a decision on a vendor. And so would like to discuss where we're at with that process. That's me echoing or not, but so we did get 5 proposals back. We narrowed it down to 3 that we did a demo essentially with, and are now narrowed down to 1, which we've identified as Utility Associates is their name. And we were also asked in the process to come up with a, I guess more of a 5-year kind of term of what it would cost the county realistically. And so we did that as part of the RFP as well. So at this point, the Utility Associates came in at about $380,000 for the 5 years. And as we've talked about before, there's a slide at the back that breaks it down into dollars per year, but the tech fund has the lion's share of it, and then there would be some obviously ongoing costs annually to be worked into the budget. So part of the reason what we liked about Utility was, again, listening to what you guys had brought up at our meetings leading up to it, and Commissioner Ludwig was had some good points on officer safety and adding another element to the officers' responsibilities. Instead of necessarily concentrating on their safety, public safety, they would have to be worrying about pushing another button or manipulating something that would take them off their true task. So Utility has a really good solution on that from what we've found. And it also has some of the features that were on that slide that I can probably talk about as we go through it. Sorry, Ryan. I'll try to confuse you as much as possible. So Utility, what they essentially do is they use a cell phone platform that they disable all of the functions except the camera and then some of their stuff that goes into it. So the platform is, as you can see in the picture on that slide, it is essentially looks like a cell phone, handles like a cell phone, and with it being that slim design, they identified the camera hanging on the outside of the uniform as one of the drawbacks of the traditional body cameras because they're attached, and if they're attached, they can be detached, and ultimately, it's going to be at the wrong time when things get pulled off. When you're in a struggle, when you want to get good video, your chances of losing your camera are pretty high. So what they have done is developed a system that actually gets sewn into uniforms, shirts, jackets, basically any external clothing can be modified to take the camera, and it's thin enough so you don't even notice it's there. It's, again, not a big bulky thing hanging off the front of officers' uniforms. So there's several advantages to that. And it really seemed to, the demo that we had with that seemed to really be a good solution in my opinion. So they're pretty heavy on the tech, as I kind of touched on. They've got sensors within the system that automate a lot of things. And one of them is a holster sensor. So whenever an officer draws their duty weapon, it activates the holster sensor that, and then sends a signal to the camera to start recording if it isn't, and also sends a camera to the bigger system, which would then also notify anyone who's working that someone has drawn their gun, and also dispatch would get a notification that an officer has drawn their gun, and it sends out GPS locations. Again, worst case scenario, not in your car, you're out getting coffee or something at a gas station and something happens, you don't have to worry about turning on your body camera, calling dispatch, and drawing your weapon to engage a would-be robber, if you will. It takes care of that. So it really does, again, answer that problem with a really good solution, I think. Also built into the system is a foot pursuit activation. So again, if you get out of or if you're outside of your car and you have to start running, you don't have to worry about activating your camera. Again, you can take care of business that you have to take care of. It will automatically start your camera for you and send the messages like we talked about before. And I did verify that it would go off even if it were me trying to run. So the sensors must be pretty good. Another thing that they've automated is there's a CAD interface that they will do. We have to work with our CAD vendor to make sure that it works on that side, and I'll on full disclosure on that. But you can, with that, anytime there is a call that we can designate, if it's a domestic that policy mandates you record, we can set that up as soon as they get within a certain perimeter of that call, camera comes on. So there's a lot less chance of people missing the recording, as we've talked about in some of the other meetings we've had with the concerns that, you know, what do you do when you have no video when everyone's supposed to have video? So that is, again, is another way to avoid officer not being able to activate it, or thinking they activated it and missing it, or something along those lines. There's also an officer safety. All of it's kind of officer safety with the automatic notifications and the mapping and stuff that gets built into it. But the one that they're really proud of, and I agree rightly so, is an officer down sensor. So it will actually, if the camera lays horizontal for, again, we can set those parameters from 10 seconds to 30 seconds or what have you. The camera will detect that. It will actually talk to the officer and say, officer down notification in 30 seconds, and then 20 seconds, and count it down. And if they don't respond or correct that, it will send an automatic notification. Like we talked about with the holster sensor, it goes out to everyone that's on duty with a map, turn-by-turn directions, and also sends that to dispatch so they can get first responders or appropriate care to them. And they actually had a save with an officer who got into a foot pursuit, got that taken care of. Everyone left the scene except him. He was going back to his car, didn't feel good, and next thing he knows, he's out. The system made the phone call for him, if you will. And they were able to, another feature that the system has is you can go in and view the camera live. So dispatch was able to log into his camera and could see Sky in the corner of a squad car. Obviously didn't respond to radio calls or anything like that. Got people there. As they say, he had a cardiac event and had a successful save on him. And I think within a week, his wife gave birth to one of their children. So they were, again, rightly so, pretty proud of that technology saving a life. So, so along with the body camera, there's the built-in squad part as well. And it all kind of is one big system. It communicates with each other. So the body camera can be a standalone. It stores data in it. When it gets within range of the squad, it downloads to the squad. The squad then downloads to the cloud or uploads, whichever way that direction is. So it all works together as integrating, so you can see what's going on in the body and the squad at the same time. The internal stuff in the squad can either be run through a laptop or it can be run on a tablet, as you see on that slide there. You know, it's front seat, back seat, so you get what's going on behind you when you're transporting somebody as well. So it covers all of that pretty much like all systems do anymore. It's more of that tech on the backside or the integration of some other stuff that really set them apart, in my opinion. So again, you can set the vehicle sensors. So if somebody gets a call, they activate their lights and sirens on the way to that call. That will automatically activate the car recording, so you can see what's going on the road as they're driving. And then you can have it set up so as soon as they open the door, then that activates their body camera. So now you've got the squad going. You're not recording while you're driving down the road, the steering wheel. But as soon as you open the car door, you're recording what the officer is seeing. And all of those sensors are set on our policy and our parameters. So it's, again, you can integrate as much as you want. You can customize it, which really was a big selling point on them. On the next slide, you've got, or next couple slides, there's action zones that you can set up. So if we have an event that's going on at the casino that's a large concert, when we get back to having those again, dispatch can actually set up a action zone that would automatically trigger a camera to be recording. Not that you necessarily want to record all of what's going on at that concert, but if it's something a little more hot. And what they pointed out was in the Las Vegas shooting, there were over 100 body cameras in that scene, and only 2 got activated. So something you obviously can avoid by having automatic stuff set up. Another thing it does really good with the mapping, you get to see what's going on, but then also it lays a trail on the map, so you can put that video on a spot on the earth, if you will, in kind of the same thing, and run the bread trail crumb where the officer or the camera would have been to where they found the evidence. You can make marks on your bread trail crumb, label them evidence found, or they threw the gun, or whatever you want, and go back, and it just integrates all of that so you can see what's going on through the video. You can also see it on a map. Really, really good for evidence and that kind of stuff later back. It also is really quick to get up into the cloud, so we can actually get that downloaded as the officer is recording it, essentially, and then be able to view it just as quickly. So it again is really, that data is getting pushed out there really fast. One of the things that I liked about this and some of the other over some of the other systems we looked at was it comes with redaction in it. As you know, state statute and policy requires us to redact certain faces, audio. So some of the other systems we looked at, it was kind of seemed to be more of an afterthought that, oh yeah, we can kind of do that, and you have to send it to almost a third party with what you want them to redact and then send it back, and it was kind of really clunky. This redaction software is built into the system and can do it in a matter of a few clicks. And you can set it to blur all faces or just designated faces. And again, it's really customizable on how you set it up, which is what, again, statute requires us to do. And this one seemed to fit the bill pretty good on that. Another thing that was really nice on this system is you can set up links for that video. So if we need to do a media release that we want to have everyone access in the media, we can just send out our normal press release that we had this incident. If you want to view the video, click here. And then we can set that to be the active for a week or whatever it is. And then we don't have people wanting to get copies burned on CD or DVD or view it, and that kind of stuff. So it really helps push out the message that we need to send at the right times. And with that, we can also set up with the county attorney's office, send them a link where they can click on it and have access to it. And we can set the abilities on what they can do with it, whether it's just view or if they can download it and disseminate it from there. And then the system also allows, I was told, any surveillance video from a gas station or anything else, we can incorporate into that. So not only do we have our video, what we recorded, but we've got those bigger overviews that would come in from the businesses and again would be in one package that we could coordinate how we send that out. Also allows us to use the phone features for audio recordings. So we can use that as our tape recorder that we used to use at one point, and the camera system. So again, it will provide that metadata for where the camera is taking pictures. And more and more, we're getting requests for not only the pictures, but the metadata that goes with it. And this all incorporates it into the reports that we can run and what we can look at. So, and the Avail Web, which is on the second to the last slide there, it is kind of how we access it. So we can access it from any computer because it's web-based. We wouldn't have to run into the office, look at video, process video from here if it was something that we need immediate action on. So if we have a major incident, we can view it from, as they kept saying, the beach in Mexico, but since I've never been there, a deer stand in Minnesota might be more likely. And again, it just helps with that decision process because you can see literally on a map where all your officers are because you're going to see where their cameras are and be able to make good higher level decisions on resources that you need, where you need people to be positioned. And again, that's a permissions base, so we could set it up for sergeants and above or dispatchers or whatever level that's appropriate for those. So the last slide is the money slide, and it breaks down a little bit on what their proposal was. Based on our conversation, there may be some modifications we can make to that would be beneficial to the county. If we extend the term, they said they could probably do better than that. Again, time will tell. But my request is that that you would approve Utility Associates as the preferred vendor for the RFP, and allow me to continue down the road of a contract with them, with some flexibility on how that gets ultimately formulated and report back to you for the final approval on the contract. And if anyone's still listening, I will be done.
Thanks, Jeff. That was good. Does anybody have any questions?
I do. Ludwig has questions.
Yep.
Jeff, I have three. So the first one is the modifications to the uniforms, jackets, and holsters. just a question that, are you gonna modify what we have, or are officers gonna have to reissue? And then my second question is, you were showing that, pursuit on foot or whatever, but I'm thinking in a car, and you could show the map or the trail. Is it possible for the officer to hit, like say a suspect throws evidence out at night, he can just hit a waypoint and then keep going? And then will it log where he saw something fly out of the car? And then my last point is, when you blur the faces in something, a picture, and then you discover that one of those people could be your suspect, can you unblur that for identification on your side?
Yeah, so the uniform alteration was a concern of mine going into it as well. And they realized obviously the same thing, I think early on, that could be an issue with their product. So what they actually have built into the contract or their proposal, and said they would be willing to modify the contract to fit too, is they will do 2 uniform shirt modifications under the contract. And then anything after that, they'll work with us, and they haven't found a article of clothing that they haven't been able to modify yet. And then they also will, I think some of the major like Dolls and other uniform people are already up on that, so we could order that built into a shirt. And then they would also come up and work with a local vendor that we've been using in, say, Aspen Mills, and teach them on how to install their product. So if they're willing to, that is, so we could get that all done locally, so it's a little quicker on the turnaround. But they have a built-in seamstress part of their company, and we send them stuff and they'll send it back. The GPS, yeah, so both the phone and the car have tracking on GPS. So regardless if it's a foot pursuit where we're trying to mark breadcrumbs, or a vehicle pursuit, you can mark them as you go up too. So, we had that just the other day where somebody's trying to get away on 35 and start pitching stuff out. So the deputy would be able to create marks basically in real time as they're dealing with that. Or again, dispatch could, or supervisor could, that would have access to those, so your deputy can drive and all that. The redaction. So what the raw video never gets altered. So there's always if we do something that we have to redact to release, for court purposes, the raw video is still there for the judge to determine what gets, used in court, like always. And you can, therefore, you go back to the raw video if you need to alter something else and have version 2 or 3 or what have you. And what they showed is really good. It did facial recognition essentially. So they showed where you had 3 people in the frame, they blurred one, and then they moved down from person to person to person, and only the one that they identified to be redacted got redacted. Then they did it the opposite, where 2 were, and did the same thing. And they can take, in that picture they took and blurred, they actually have skin blur, so the system will automatically flag anything that's skin and blur it. So it sets that up. If that's all you need to do is show what happened, and you don't want to identify anyone, you eliminate everyone's face in one click, essentially, instead of frame by frame like some of the other systems.
Thank you.
Jeff, I have a couple of questions or comments. Is in the batteries, because it's a regular cell phone, so people have to remember to charge that every time their shift is done, I would assume.
Yeah, so there's they say it's a 16 hours of recording time. So there's other standby time in that. Our normal shifts are 12 hours, so nobody's going to ever record a full 12 hours in one shift. And then they also say the batteries are capable of like a 15-minute charge will get you back to like 50% or something. So,
All right.
they were pretty good about answering to that requirement that we had as well.
And it sounds like you don't have to be a NASA engineer to run the stuff, so that's always concerning.
And that's a good thing for me. Yes.
Yeah, well, me too. It's something we've talked about for years, actually, and it kind of fell off the table and came back, and so the tech committee has kind of been apprised of this all along, and it right now seems like this is a much better product than we had anticipated it could be. So thank you very much for the due diligence that you and Ryan have taken on. At this point, do we need a motion to move forward, or is the tech committee's recommendation enough to move forward until we get a final number?
Mr. Chair, members of the
Yes.
board, this is David. The request is for board direction to identify utility as the preferred vendor and direct staff and the sheriff to begin the contract negotiation phase.
Is that direction a consensus, or should we make a motion?
A motion, if you would, please.
Okay, then I am looking for a motion to have the sheriff move ahead with utility as our vendor and negotiate a final contract.
Commissioner Moore will make that motion.
Ludwig will second.
Any other discussion or questions?
Yeah, one, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We've funded this project already, correct?
Yes, we have been setting aside money in our tech fund to take care of the initial purchase, and then the yearly 34,000 something will come out of general fund dollars in the years going forward. It's kind of like, I think I made the comment before, we buy vehicles and stuff, and then we buy gas and tires and oil changes out of our general budget. And really, that's kind of what we're doing here. It's a big purchase, but I think it's something in this day and age we need to move forward. So we do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to say, we did have this in the tech committee budget. When we did it, it was the initial purchase, not the yearly kind of maintenance fee. So that is the extra over the 5 years is, and actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan or the sheriff, I think these guys were the cheapest too. So it's kind of one of them. It was a win-win on all sides. It seems a little more than I think what we all had in our head, but we didn't look at it over 5 years when we were looking at the original purchase. So that's where that maintenance fee comes in, and which every one of them have it.
Yeah.
But
Any other?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a quick question for Jeff. Do our neighboring counties have this capability? And if they do, do you know of any county that's used this vendor, or do you have any experience with them from anybody else? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, no. None of our neighbors do. They're starting to go to body cameras, but everyone's kind of on a different system. We did hear back from Olmsted County. They are the first that went to this in Minnesota. I reached out to them at the beginning of the process, and before we met with them a week or so ago to get an update, and they spoke very highly of them. Obviously, there's glitches, there's concerns here and there, but they the one thing they really spoke on that means a lot to me is the customer service and their willingness to make things right and come up with solutions. They're again saying all the right things on that, and from right now, it sounds really encouraging. A selling point to me is pretty much everyone I talk to is former law enforcement, so they understand kind of the whole bigger picture of what that means to the agency, and how something not working could really destroy people's willingness to embrace the technology. So to me, that really speaks highly too of what they're doing to prevent that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Any other questions? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
District 3, Commissioner Chafee.
Yes.
District 4, Commissioner McRae.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Matt, did you vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. That passes, and we'll move on to the extension update from Suzanne Heinrich. Suzanne, I saw you there before.
Hi, Mr. Chair.
Hi.
Hello,
Glad to have
and
you.
thank you very much for inviting me to give a little update from the world of extension. So it'll be short, but I really wanted to comment on how I appreciate how efficient your meetings are. You've gotten good at this WebEx stuff. So I like a lot of the work that you're working or that you've changed to by doing online meetings. Extension has really embraced that as well. So currently the extension staff, they're all working at home, but much of their work is online, connecting with the public or providing educational efforts online. So right now we do have a date of June 30th is when we're going to continue to do online. That's being assessed. Hopefully toward the end of the summer, we can get back into in person, or at least maybe at the very bare minimum in the field, having a workshop in the field. We'll just see. We're very cautious on that. So David and Debbie sent you an update, and it's on the county website. So you have that. It's a written report. I just wanted to cover a general overview of a couple of things from each of the staff members with an extension of what they've been doing in the last few weeks and a couple of months. So since Rod started on April 6th, he's the new ag educator. You've met him. He has started a Facebook page, and so I want to encourage you to find that and like it. So I'm going to share it if I can here. Let's see if I can do it. Yep, I can. So hopefully you are able to see the Facebook page that Rod has started. His goal is 100 people by June 1st, and he's up to 65. So right now he's been sharing a lot of information on this website, probably 5 or 6 times a week he's sharing information. He will back off as time goes and probably just do 2 updates a week or whatever's relevant. But right now he's just really trying to create a buzz and trying to get people to follow him on that page. So I want you to know that that's out there. A lot of what he's doing right now is kind of, you know, back of the room type of processing, trying to get to know people by phone. He's also doing a lot of merging. We had many mailing lists that he's working on, trying to get one complete mailing list, agriculture type folks in the county. And he's also planning with collaborators to do some efforts, hopefully later on in the summer, with Soil and Water, 4-H, NRCS, and others. So he's looking at a fall-winter series for beginner farmers, which is really great. One thing I just want to note is now that we have an ag educator in Pine County, Rod is very well poised to plug research in Pine County. He has been working on some research type grants in the past. And what's exciting about having him there, any local ag educator tries to get research that the university is involved in into their county. And so I think that is going to happen. And so we'll have some local research results to be able to share with other farmers. So that's something that I look forward to seeing as Rod gets into this. So I'm going to stop. Well, actually, I'll just go on to the next one. I'm going to share the 4-H page. Any questions on Rod and ag educator component? Okay, I'll move on to 4-H. And now that we know that there isn't going to be a county fair, Frank and others in the region are working on what's that look like. They want to make sure there's a valuable and an interactive showcase for youth who have been working on their projects all year long. So that is in the works. But I wanted to show you as well online, there's a lot of effort going into online workshops for kids. And yesterday afternoon, there were a lot of kids online doing science experiments with 4-H through a Zoom. And so kids had to gather up common household things, baking soda, maybe a couple of other things, and they did some experiments. This is an example that I'm sharing here of the STEM webpage for 4-H, and it has quite a few opportunities for families to work through curriculum, but also if they want to join upcoming events, they're listed on this page as well. It was funny that Commissioner Holland, you mentioned a NASA engineer because 4-H has been connecting with NASA, and they, over the last few weeks, kids from Pine County, as well as 600 youth from across Minnesota have attended these weekly sessions with NASA engineers. So here's one of the NASA engineers in his broadcast to Minnesota 4-Hers. So yes, we might not be NASA engineers ourselves, but maybe some of these youth might be. So that's an article about this Meet a NASA Engineer effort that had been happening the last few weeks. So I'll stop sharing my screen for a second and then go on to, I want to just highlight some of the work that's being done also. Well, any questions on 4-H? Okay. And I want to highlight some of the things that the Master Gardeners are doing. They have had to really transition their work too. They had to cancel their horticulture day that was scheduled for April. They've also scheduled their upcoming they've canceled their upcoming plant sale. And they had been raising some plants specifically for that plant sale. So they had been working with the schools, and they distributed some plants along with information to students and worked with the science teacher in Hinckley and Finlayson schools and got those out to kids. And those kids are raising those plants. It was a plant called the Wandering Jew plant. And kids are now, that went home on the school bus to them. So there's some inventive things that are coming out of this new day of working in this pandemic. So also, they've been interacting with other schools too, including East Central and Willow River and Pine City, to bring out newsletters for kids, so that encouraging kids to get outdoors during this time and helping them think and see their yards differently. Jimmy Johnson is doing some SNAP-Ed health and nutrition work that has turned into way different. He usually goes into school districts. He usually meets with people also in community groups. He has been moving to a lot of Zoom meetings, and they still have community groups going. Jimmy's work is to bring a health and nutrition and recreation focus to those community groups. And he has a pastor network that is working on improved food access. And they're doing community gardens also in the community. So you'll read about that in the update. And there's an update on the website of this report. And as you know, we have Brianna Michaels, who also is housed at the Pine County Extension Office. Brianna works mostly with Mille Lacs, Band of Ojibwe, and Bois Forte, and then Pine and Itasca counties. She works on community groups and leading conversations. She has taught quite a few workshops with counties, including Pine County, on a curriculum called Healing Through History, helping people understand the perspective from a Native American lens on what history has and helping to create some common understanding. She currently is working on a lot of not necessarily, she can't get into the community right now, so she's working on writing journal articles to make sure that this work is documented appropriately, and then working on evaluations for future work as well. So a couple things I want to just highlight in general across Extension that Extension or residents in Pine County have access to too is, I'll share my screen one more time. And I want to go to U of M Extension has a COVID-19 response page. So if you're looking for resources from Extension, you could just Google U of M Extension and COVID, and that will get you some resources. So it takes you to this landing page. It notes that all of our education right now has moved online, and there are lots of resources for families, but there's some things I wanted to show you specifically. So Extension has quite a large...
We aren't seeing that page, Suzanne.
You aren't? Thank you. I must not have clicked. Maybe David is sharing it. Yes, thank you.
Just
There.
able to share it.
I like that picture.
Oh, am I sharing the wrong screen?
Well, we're seeing your two daughters at a river.
I'm sorry, that's the wrong screen. Only a good reminder, always be careful what you share.
Right. I appreciate you doing this. We still see them.
If you can't take the share to the screen, take the screen to the share. Is that better?
There you go.
Yep.
Okay.
If you would go down to the section entitled Finances, Extension educators across the state, we have a team that works on finances. If you would click into the adjusting to income loss page, there's quite a few resources for people who are adjusting to a sudden income loss, and strategies for spending, setting your spending priorities, but then also helping to budget, create budgets, how to spend less, how to adjust in various ways. So there's some tips and tricks on this page that can allow people to weather this time a little bit better. So David, would you back out of this page and go back to the COVID-19 page? And then if you would just go down right below to food support. U of M Extension was quick to create. It's for food support. One more section down. There you go. Okay, so you'll see a 14-day meal kit for rural grocery stores. That is available at many mom and pop grocery stores. So across Minnesota, U of M Extension has a following that they're working with mom and pop grocery stores to keep them alive. I mean, look at Pine City and Chris's. We know firsthand that this is a tough business to be in. If you click into that report right there, it shows, it gives a menu for 14 days. Someone could call into their grocery store and say, I want the 14-day meal kit. Would you please just box that up for me? You can pick it up at curbside. It gives recipes. There's many helpful hints on this page. And I wanted you to know about it because food insecurity is real. And this is one of the resources that helps people. So you can back out of that whenever you're ready. You'll have to go back and then back. and then go back to that food support landing at the COVID-19 page. And then over on the right, there was under food support again, there's curbside pickup and delivery. So we have created some guidelines or some suggestions for small town retailers and grocery. If you click into that again, you can find some suggestions on how to handle and best practices for curbside delivery and how to handle retail for small town grocery and retail establishments. So these are important resources that are being distributed to communities, and just wanted you to know that these are available. And then the last thing I wanted to cover was the community economics webinars. So that's the last link, David, in that email. So you'll have to go back to that. I know I'm making you do handstands. There it is. Wow. Yes. So I wanted you to know about this. This is already coming up on Thursday. And I'm sharing this with you because I know your county board is very proactive in community development and making sure that you support the community and businesses. So this is a webinar that is happening. They have one other one. They're having this one, and I'm sure they'll plan more. This one is on retaining businesses during a pandemic. It's on Thursday at 9 o'clock. The guest speaker is going to be state economist Laura Kalambakidis. So this would be, if you wanted to register for this, they're having this on Thursday, but they will have more workshops in this topic coming up. So I hope that I've given you a flavor of what the county extension office is doing, resources that you have available to you from the state extension as well.
Thank you, Suzanne. I have directed a couple of people to Rod so far because
Good.
I think people need to know that resource is available, and they had questions, you know, how do I don't even know what they were seeding down, a pasture or hayland or something, and Rod got them some info, just really timely. So appreciate that.
You mentioning that because he said last week he had, I think, 2 calls. So 2 is better than 0. And I'm hoping to double that as each day, each week. So if you could all share that whenever you have someone that's having a question, that would be great. Good idea.
The other thing is as most of you know, the Pine County Fair did cancel for 2020, but one of the hard decisions of that was the 4-H kids. And so we have met with, as a statewide association, with the 4-H leadership in trying to develop some kind of 4-H recognition day. So depending on how things move along, a way that we could judge animals and projects without having people overnight their animals at the fair, you know, bring in, today is sheep day or whatever, and today is bring in your woodworking project, or however that's going to work. The details have not been worked out, but there's a lot of people that are willing to step up to the plate and help kids, and so that's encouraging. And extension, make sure we can do it in a way that's safe for everybody. So thanks.
Glad to hear that. Good. And I know Frank is very interested in that, and so is Minnesota 4-H. So yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Another item is, just this morning I was trying to help a local restaurant owner because they're being told as they start planning to reopen, you know, meat is going to be in very short supply, and to try to line them up with some people who would have a steady supply of burger and whatever. And we're lucky in Pine County, we have several people that have pretty large feedlots, so they have a steady supply of meat. And we do have a USDA approved plant that we actually had an extension meeting at, I believe, that I went to.
Yes.
And so maybe we can get some of these people back to the origins where it's locally sourced, it's locally processed, and now we can locally eat it. So
Mhm.
that would be pretty cool.
You're right. I'll make sure that Rod is aware of that too.
Yep.
That, yeah, he knows Lake Haven meats, but yes, I'll mention that to him.
Okay. Any other questions for Suzanne? Thank you very much, Suzanne.
Thank you.
We'll move on to Corona's response updates. Did you have anything first, David? We're not hearing you. Not hearing you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, do you want to take a 5-minute recess just to give people a chance to?
I would
take a
love
break
to.
Before we
Let's
move into that?
Let's take a 5-minute recess. And then Amy, you'll be on deck, and Becky.
Well, it doesn't fit. Are they opening anything?
Of course, I forgot to keep track of when we went on break, but
11:20,
11:20, and it is
11:24.
so we got another minute. How come it's 11:28 on my microwave and it's 11:24 on my oven? It's 11:26 on my computer, and it's 11:25 on my watch. Okay, it looks like most people are back. Amy, are you there? Oh my, look at that. You got the pilot headset on and everything. I can hear you, Amy.
I'm doing. So they need to be.
All right. Go ahead, Amy. You are breaking up a little bit. Okay, Amy, you can go ahead.
An update as what the reports are right now. Yesterday we did have. Okay, thank you. Phone.
Yeah. Now we can. Are you dialing in on your phone, Amy? I think Amy is, looks like frozen in time possibly, so we'll come back to her. If Becky, are you ready?
Yep. If you give me a second, I hope everybody can hear me. I will share some content of my screen. I just want to make sure I have the right thing up. Okay. I'm thinking everybody can see this okay,
Yep.
and it looks like it's sharing.
Yep, we have it.
Awesome. So as a county management team, we've been meeting about twice a week for the last several weeks, just updating each other on department head updates. Sam and Denise are talking about the public health emergency and emergency management updates. And this presentation is really designed to give an update to the entire county board and just kind of summarize what we've seen so far and summarize some data. Because we want to make sure we're looking at the science and the data of this situation as we move forward, and just some ongoing questions that we can think about as we're making some key decisions moving forward. So this data is as of Sunday, so it's a few days old. I could have probably ran myself ragged updating this continuously over the last 48 hours, and I've just decided not to do that. But this information is a few days old, and I just want to be very honest about that. I do cite the sources in this PowerPoint, so anybody can look up the CDC website or MDH website to get the most current daily update. So on the slide, it just informs everybody that as of Sunday, there were over 1.4 million positive cases of COVID in the United States. We were approaching 90,000 deaths on Sunday. I believe we've gotten closer to that, maybe even surpassed that since Sunday night. Looking at the history of this, there's always talk, if you're watching the news or part of the management meetings, about the exponential growth of this virus. And if you look at just snapshot points and times of how many cases are positive, you can kind of see what that looks like. So according to the CDC, on February 16th, there were 0 new cases. March 16th, 755 new positive cases across the nation. And then a lot of stuff happened between March 16th and April 16th. And I believe that really is a testament to everything that was happening in New York. There were over 29,000 new cases on April 16th. And then May 16th, we were still trekking upwards of about 32,000 positive cases on May 16th. Then, according to the CDC, they have some information about the breakdown of the cases by age. There's been a lot of talk in this virus really having a negative impact, serious impact on the elderly, and that is certainly the case. But as you can see in this slide, the people who are testing positive are across the age ranges, with the lowest group being the younger population, which is consistent with at least what I'm hearing in the news. And so the biggest 2 areas that I have highlighted here are the 18 to 44 years of age and the 45 to 64 years of age. And the reason why I've highlighted that is because that's really who represents my workforce at Health and Human Services, and I think that would be across the county organization. This information is posted on the MDH website, and as of Sunday, we had 15,668 positive cases to date. And then a snapshot in time between March and May 11th, let's just kind of signifies how fast we've grown in Minnesota with positive cases. So March 11th, there were 10 new positive cases. April 11th, there were 74 new positive cases. And May 11th, there were 734 new cases. And I think this is a testament to, again, the exponential growth that we're seeing. In the beginning, when there were first positive cases in Minnesota, it could be tracked back to international travel or some cruise ship travel. And now we've had it for a while, that community spread, where we're getting it from each other versus being able to track it back to a certain event or a certain trip. So as of Sunday, 2,090 people in Minnesota were hospitalized. That's about 13.3% of the people who test positive. This lines up with the estimated 15% of serious cases, which we'll talk about later, what that means about a serious illness. And it does not account for some of the people who are, significantly ill but haven't been hospitalized. So 487 people were in the hospital on May 17th. 120 of them were in intensive care. Of the 2,090 people who were hospitalized across this time, 716 people required intensive care units. And the reason why I'm highlighting that is, that's was kind of a reality check for me. That means like 35% of the total hospitalizations required some kind of intensive care stabilization. As of Sunday, there were 722 deaths across the state. I know that number's increased. And 587 of these deaths could be traced back to long-term care or assisted living group congregate care, which is 81.3% of the deaths in Minnesota. In the previous slide, we referenced severe illness. And so according to the MDH website, some context around COVID is that most people who contract the virus are going to get better without too much of a problem. So severe illness is defined as those individuals who have required hospitalization. So I could be really sick, go to the emergency department or urgent care several times to get help, but unless I'm hospitalized, it's not necessarily defined as a severe illness. And we also know so far that the risk of severe illness is higher for some categories of people. I have some of these categories of people listed on the slide. So if you're age 65 and older, it puts you at higher risk. If you live in a nursing home or long-term care facility, you're also at higher risk. And then there's also been conversations about being higher risk if you have some underlying health conditions. Some of these conditions are severe obesity of a BMI of 40 or higher, diabetes, or chronic lung disease, or moderate to severe asthma. The next slide is going to show you some data specific to Pine County around some of this higher risk category issues. So according to the website that I've cited here, 20.7% of the population in Pine County is 65 or older. So that's a group or a category of individuals who are at higher risk for severe illness. And then I've also pulled some information and data from the 2020 County Health Rankings, which is on the MDH website. And so I know Governor Walz has to balance the whole population of the state of Minnesota, where in Pine County, we're responsible for really Pine County data and Pine County actions. So according to the county health rankings, out of 87 counties, Pine County ranks 79th out of 87 counties. That's not a good place to be. I would much rather prefer us to be in the top 20, but that's how we're ranked right now in the state. According to these statistics, 20% of adults in Pine County are smokers. The state average is 15%. 35% of adults in Pine County are obese, and that's with a BMI of 30 or higher, and the state average is 28%. The diabetes prevalence in Pine County is 13%, and at a state level, it's at 8%. So in some of these higher risk categories, we have higher than average percentages compared to the state. So we know that as we move forward, we're going to have to make a lot of decisions. We've already made a lot, and the seriousness of those decisions probably continue to grow as we move along. So in looking at some of the data and the articles surrounding COVID, I wanted to extract some of that data to help us make some of those decisions. What we know, and during this presentation, especially during this portion, there will be times that I call on Sam Lowe, or she will be adding information as our public health director and public health expert. And I think that's important to have her feedback as well. So really, successful infection or successful getting this virus is exposure to the virus over time or times time. We know that at least from this article, 44% of all people who get infected occur from people who aren't symptomatic. Either they're pre-symptomatic or they're asymptomatic. So a lot of times people are spreading COVID and they don't even know that they have it. And so that's a serious concern as we move forward. And if we take out the outbreaks that we've seen in the nursing homes and long-term care facilities, we can really focus on three main areas: prisons, religious ceremonies, and workplaces. So prisons, even looking at the Pine County data, you can see how that's an area of concern. And then what we can focus on is the workplace here in Pine County. So one of the quotes that stood out to me in this article is, when you're in an enclosed space or place sharing the same air for a prolonged period of time, it increases your chances of exposure and infection. Social and physical distancing are great, but they're only going to provide you with so much protection. I wanted to show this picture, this diagram that was included in the article. This is a restaurant type setup. And it kind of shows you in picture form how easily COVID can spread. You'll see all those circles in highlighted in red on the exterior, that indicates individuals who tested positive for COVID after this experience. You'll see somebody identified as A1. A1 is the person who tested positive for COVID first. And again, this just shows you how quickly it can spread and how far it can spread, because there's certainly more than 6 feet apart between A1 and C1, and or at least I would think, and A1 and C2. So it just goes to show it's really hard to contain this virus. And I added one more slide from yesterday's presentation. This is a diagram that was in that article that shows a call center. So call centers are obviously, in my mind, when I get a picture of a call center, I get a picture of crowded people working in workstations or cubicles, doing a lot of phone contact with people over the phone. So the blue seats are individuals who have tested positive after one person came down with it. So clearly it spread quickly, and I'm sure many people were pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic, and therefore it was able to spread even more. Exponential growth is what we're hearing. There's this article from the Imperial Academy, and it talks about different tactics that countries and governments can take to really try to protect people and prevent the spread. And what it really highlighted was suppression tactics. And this is really what our governments have been trying to do thus far. And this is the preferred way to deal with COVID right now until at least there can be some kind of vaccination or we have herd immunity. It's a combination of social distancing, home isolation, and household quarantine, supplemented by school and university closures. There is a challenge to this. It could be another 12 to 15 months before a vaccine is discovered that can be mass produced and given to individuals. I know with the current federal administration, the hope is to have that vaccine being rolled out by January 1st. I really hope we can do that. I think that's an aggressive time frame. But even from now until then, we have several months. So we still have to deal with the brutal reality that we find ourselves in right now. The article also talked about suppression tactics being able to be relaxed temporarily in short windows of time, but having to reintroduce them when case numbers rebound. So it's kind of like the wave that we're talking about. What are we going to do when the situation gets better, but then all of a sudden we find ourselves in a really bad situation again? What tactics are we going to take, and how do we take them? There has been so much happening with COVID, and there's so much that we don't know right now. And this is a slide that I'm really going to call on Sam to help us talk about this in a little more depth. So I think any one of us can attest to all the changes that we've seen. What's true on a Monday may be completely different on a Wednesday, even on a Tuesday, just depending on what we're talking about and what we're doing. I know with this disease and this virus, we've talked a lot about it impacting the older population, but there are, emerging trends in other subgroups. For young children right now, there's a lot of talk about a Kawasaki-like disease, and younger adults who are getting this without underlying health conditions are also having some issues. So Sam, I wanted to make sure to give you an opportunity to add to that if you felt that was necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's growing evidence out there that while this is spread through a respiratory mechanism through droplets and through aerosol, that it's not just impacting your respiratory system. And that's why you're seeing this weird uptick in a Kawasaki-like disease. It's not technically Kawasaki, but it's basically the same thing, which is a very rare complication that little kids have. And they're seeing it in, usually it happens to under 5, and it's actually happening in slightly older kids too. And it's very rare to see an uptick like this. Is very strange. And it's hitting multiple systems. It's hitting your cardiac system. It's hitting your, GI system. So it's it's a very strange virus that's messing around with multiple systems. So we're just learning more every day about this. You know, younger adults having strokes and heart attacks because blood clotting is now being like really digging into it in terms of normally a flu does not cause your blood to clot. So it's just, we're learning more and more, and it's a very strange virus that we can't always predict very well in terms of how well you'll do if you catch it as a, like if I, 32-year-old young adult with no underlying health conditions, I can't guarantee that I'll be fine. So we're learning more every day about it.
Thank you, Sam. So recently we heard Governor Walz, we're now under, instead of stay home, it's stay safe. Non-critical businesses were allowed to open recently. They needed to have a social distancing plan and operating at 50% capacity. June 1st, we know that bars, restaurants, salons are going to be able to open, and the state is still developing some guidance around those sectors. And Governor Walz has to balance the economy, which I know is a really pressing matter right now. When you look at budget projections, unemployment, there's just a lot happening that he has to balance with all the staying safe and staying at home orders. He's also acknowledged the possibility of turning the dial back down as needed. I think something that we want to keep in mind is the CDC has some guidance out there that really before things open up, there should be a 2-week time frame of numbers consistently going down with positive cases and such. We haven't seen that 2 weeks yet. So some of this is going against the guidance put out by the CDC. But again, I think it goes to state the difficulty of balancing all the other things. So as we move forward, I think there's a couple key questions we can ask ourselves. I know that the governor is taking into account, and he has to, the economy and everything that's happening to the economy right now as he's making decisions. And I think it's fair for us to think about that as well. So a question I think we can ask ourselves is what economy is gained or lost if our buildings remain closed, yet are open by appointment and with special precautions taken for appointment-only visitors and for our staff who need to meet with those appointment-only visitors. Are department heads ready, or do we have a plan if our smaller units or one-man teams, so to speak, become ill or quarantined? Quarantine is a long road. And so we could potentially have somebody out for 2 weeks. And so if there's only one person who knows how to do payroll, or only one person who knows how to file certain benefits on behalf of veterans, how are we going to function if those people are quarantined or not able to work for a while? If we open up our buildings, how do we ensure compliance with social distancing? Is there good ventilation? And I think another key question that we must ask ourselves is, once our buildings open, what criteria are we going to use in determining when or if the buildings have to shut down again? When this all first started, it's hard to go back in time, it was only a couple months ago, but we closed our buildings before the stay home. And so I think it's just okay to look back in time and use that experience as we make future decisions to figure out what it is the best course of action. And that's my last slide.
Trying to find the mute button, the unmute button. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Amy, are you connected now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you. I can hear you, Amy.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I have satellite internet at home, so it is not the most reliable.
Okay.
This has been very interesting for me to listen to, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to let me know where the courts are at. So I just kind of wanted to update you on what has happened since Judge Martin presented last.
Sure.
So we met with county administration on May 8th to discuss a proposed date to reopen one of our courtrooms, courtroom B, to start holding some hearing and what measures needed to be in place. So Pete and Dave were a part of that meeting along with our judges. And then we also incorporated Heather Immel and Rod later on. We assigned courtroom B to be the place to hold our first on-site hearing with parties present in the courthouse. And we actually did hold some of those hearings yesterday. They were order for protection hearings and harassment hearings. It went pretty well. I was just going to go over some of the safety precautions that we went over before we did that. So we worked with Heather and Rod to get the bailiff assignment in place. We had 2 bailiffs on site. One of the bailiffs met the party at the entrance and escorted them to and from the courtroom for the purpose of the hearing and to ensure social distancing was in place. The bailiff in court was responsible for court security and to enforce social distancing. So then after the court hearings, the bailiff wiped down the tables and any additional surfaces that needed disinfecting. We did have masks available at the time for parties, and we encouraged them to bring masks in if they didn't have them. There was also hand sanitizer at each of the tables. It would have been Pete and Sarah, my supervisor, worked to get X's on the floor to kind of show people where to sit in the galleys. Up at court administration area, there's currently the yellow tape that cordons off the area where people could normally sit. The jury assembly room was locked, is currently still locked, and we don't intend to allow public access into that. Again, all the chairs and tables in the hallway were placed in other locations, and this is to discourage loitering within the courthouse. Public bathrooms were available on the top floor. These are cleaned daily by our maintenance team. Public water fountains are not available until further notice. We have 1 conference room available with 2 separate tables with vinyl chairs that are separated by 8 feet. All the other remaining public conference rooms are locked, and our public access computers are currently taped off to allow access. There's 8-foot tape placements that are on the floor in front of court administration. So if we choose to open on June 1st, it would to try to enforce that social distancing. That was kind of a rundown of what we did. I forgot that Sam Lowe was also a part of our discussions, and she was very helpful, just making sure we were in compliance. The feedback that we did receive from the people whose hearings we set, where they were glad to get these hearings set. These were order for protections and our harassment. So stuff where people felt in danger. We were able to get their matters heard. We do have other hearings set for later this week to try to finish out hearing those order for protection and harassment hearings. They'll be staggered. They're at the 1.5 hour increments, and we're going to leave these same safety protocols in place. We are hoping to expand to start hearing some of our criminal matters the week of June 18th or sooner, and we're going to work to meet with the public defender's office before then, and I intend to reach out to Reese with the county attorney's office just to make sure that those attorneys who are coming in feel safe. When we sent out notices for those hearings and when we reached out to people, we did go over all the safety protocols we had in place. If you guys do intend to open on June 1st, the building, we're actually working on a plan as well with the court. So that was kind of a brief rundown, but I just wondered if you guys had any questions for me.
Questions of Amy? I appreciate the update, Amy. Thanks for what you guys are doing. And if you need any support, please ask the administration and we'll try to get it for you.
I do have one additional thing that we did as well that you mentioned that. Thanks, Commissioner. We did have a person come in, I think it was North Star Glass. They're doing the Isanti County Courthouse. We're working to get glass installed around the witness stands to separate the witness from the court reporter, from the judge, and from my staff. So it isn't the public facing, but it's where they're sitting next to each other. We got an estimate done for glass on that. I've submitted it to my district administration, and they've said that they could cover half. So what I'm doing is I'm working on a proposal to give back to Dave. And Dave and Pete have been very helpful with setting up the people to come in with North Star Glass, and also working with us to get those estimates done to keep the public safe when they come into the courtrooms and courthouse.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Amy.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I guess the main exercise here is to just be sure commissioners are all updated on the current status of what the county is doing, and then have an opportunity to weigh in and give some direction. When we did close the courthouse, that resolution did give a delegation of authority to the board chair and the administrator to make decisions on reopening. Back then, we did not know how things were going to play out. And so it does seem like we have some time. And I certainly want to be sure to get some input from commissioners with regards to the delivery of services. And if I could make just a couple of points, I think Amy brought out the concept that the governor has been reviewing when he puts, he talks about his dials. And if you've watched his presentations and you see the slides, those dials go from highly controlled environments to less controlled environments to uncontrolled environments. And you see what the courts have done is they have started off with a highly controlled environment where only the people that they want in the courtroom are in the courtroom, and they have the controls in place to make sure that people follow the rules. And of course, when you're a judge in your courtroom, it's probably one of the most highly controlled environments any of us will go to, because the judge gets to make a lot of the rules. But that's kind of a model for how to ramp up services. The county, since this began, has been very focused on ensuring that critical and necessary services have been delivered. So when we talk about opening the county, it's not only about allowing access to service, because service delivery has continued. And Becky shared a slide, and I want to share a sheet that I have that has some just thoughts about, as we think about opening facilities, we want to, I assume you're all looking at the 1 through 6, although 6 seems to be double numbered. The things that we'd want to consider are, what are the executive orders and the state requirements regarding public assemblies? So today we know that we can have assemblies of 10 or fewer with controls. So that's distancing, barriers, masks, etc. We want to be sure that any decision we make for the public follows MDH and CDC recommendations, and anything we have our employees doing also has to follow OSHA regulations and guidelines. And then number 3 is the needs of the public for in-person services. And we have found that most services that we found a lot of services that can be delivered remotely and not in person, which may be different if you're the customer. It might not be how you would prefer to have it, but it is a way that service can be delivered. And then for in-person services, we're still exercising protection, which includes the use of masks and barriers. And then for HHS in particular, we have some waivers for services. And I know there's been a little bit of confusion. Some of it I have been the cause of on when the waivers expire. And so Becky has clarified that the waivers come from different sources. And so depending on where the waiver comes from, the termination of that waiver may vary. And so as a rule of thumb, the waivers that the Department of Human Services have issued to HHS will expire with the governor's peacetime emergency unless extended by the legislature. Other waivers by the Department of Health for WIC will continue potentially beyond that emergency declaration. And then this gets, number 5 gets to the control piece, the ability to regulate the number of visitors and maintain best practices. And then also the idea that we can do a phased reopening versus it's an all or nothing approach. So if any of those points are helpful, I guess today we'd just like to get some feedback from commissioners on expectations and direction for county facilities. And then you also can maybe think about your county board meetings and how, if the governor's order, peacetime emergency expires on the 12th of June, when and how you'd like to think about phasing in-person meetings back into your schedule.
I got some thoughts, but I'll defer to the rest of the board. If you got questions right off the bat. Well, here's, I've been involved with these meetings that the staff has had, and the direction I think we are heading down is on June 1st is a Monday. That we would, and I think we talked about is the Friday before that or the Thursday afternoon before that a kind of a soft opening, but we do have services continuing, but there are a certain population that are going to think that because they can go to a restaurant or wherever on June 1st, that why can't I go get my marriage license, and you need to do that in person. And why can't I have my document recorded and I can, instead of leaving it in the box, I want to go do that. I think we can accomplish those by June 1st without endangering anybody's life. I think we've got people that have been working either from home or in an office, and I think we can make that happen. I think June 2nd is our next board meeting, and that is scheduled for Pine City. And my thought would be that we would do that one electronically. And if things are still progressing well, then we would do the second meeting in June in Sandstone, and we have some better opportunity to distance ourselves in that room, and maybe we continue meeting in Sandstone until for a while anyway. That's kind of my thoughts. And then the next other meeting we have is the oh, Kelly, what I get confused if it's what we call that meeting in June. The
County Board of Equalization.
Board of Equalization. And what are our thoughts on that? Are we thinking we can do that one in person? Because we haven't had very many people in the past. Can we do it in the jury assembly room so we have more room to spread out?
So, Mr. Chair, my 2 cents that I wanted to give, or thoughts for you guys to consider, is, so currently we have 2 people that are signed up, and so yes, that's regular low attendance. However, we currently have about 60 properties that we're in the process of reviewing folks that appealed to their township board of appeal that we were unable to work through those appeals because we were unable to physically review those properties. So depending on how those turn out, we could have very high attendance. We will have a better idea of what the number of appointments will be probably by that June 2nd county board meeting. So I guess I mean, if you guys make a decision today, great, but maybe don't necessarily feel pressure to make the decision today for that meeting, just because we'll have more information to June 2nd.
Steve?
If there are 25 people, we can just schedule them every 15 minutes till we're done. So I mean, we don't, all 25 aren't going to be in the room at the same time. But I think you're right. Let's wait until June 2nd to make that call. Matt, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, I support your first comments. I think the public has an expectation of our public offices. They're paying the freight, and I hear it all the time, so they're gonna want to have some contact, and I think we need to be limited though. At least enough so when someone does walk into an office, there's someone there to answer those questions. Because I'm like you, there's a large segment of our population that does not email, they don't text message. They want to walk in and get their service in person, and they're paying the taxes. So
yeah, I think we can figure out how to accomplish that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we got a couple weeks to figure that out.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just maybe a question for Matt or for any commissioner who's getting feedback. Are there particular services or areas that you're hearing about that people are most interested in? Being most interested in getting back to a walk-in availability?
No, I guess I haven't drilled into it. It's just the fact that, it's like this, when we hire for those positions, we're not hired to sit at home and work. And that when we, what I'm saying, there's offices they sit in, they have a job, they're there for a phone call. It's more the theory of the whole market. And some people think old fashioned because the whole internet thing and all that means nothing. So you just hear those things. How is this happening? What's happening? And they have a different expectation than a lot of us do. So it's out there. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
I think we're on a good trajectory to get enough of our row offices open. That's where I think we need to concentrate.
Yeah.
I think from what I heard, was it yesterday from Becky, that they have a plan that they will have fleshed out by June 1st for veteran services, and so I'm comfortable with that. I'm not sure if we've reached out to Soil and Water to see what they need, but we can certainly make sure that's done. Highway has been functioning quite well, and I think occasionally they do have somebody that wants to walk in and get a culvert permit or something, and I think they'll be able to accommodate them by June 1st. So I think we're on a good path.
Yeah, for your soil and water question, they had a discussion at the meeting, and it was they don't get a lot of walk-in,
right,
other than the public that's programmed to go there for the health and human services. That's the bulk of there, and they're not programmed to go to the new building yet, and that's still happening.
Right.
So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just maybe reviewing the VSO plan, because I know that's important to a lot of commissioners and constituents. Mindy has been working, to maintain contact with veterans and be sure that paperwork is being filed. There's a notification of claim document that has to be filed, that then the applicant can follow up after that notice is filed with the actual application for benefits. And so we feel that all of that is happening. And then as we phase back in, because some of this paperwork requires a significant amount of work that's really best done in person, we have found that Mindy is going to start making appointments with veterans. And so that there wouldn't be just walking in, and saying, hey, I need to do this, that, or the other thing. It would be making an appointment so that Mindy could block that off, be sure that there's not other people in the office, because we want to, not have a crowded room to avoid the spread or contamination of other people. And then being able to take that time with that particular veteran to go through their file, get all the paperwork correct and ready to submit, and then doing that on an appointment basis. And so with that approach, we think that's probably most effective and protects the veterans from being in an environment where there's a lot of walk-in traffic, as well as protecting staff and getting the job done.
And I can attest to the fact that Mindy has gone above and beyond. I have seen her meet a veteran in the parking lot of McDonald's and sign the paper that needed to be signed on the hood of a car. That's kind of above and beyond, I think. And she understands that the whole idea that Veteran Service Office was to be an open, welcoming place to veterans, and they have endorsed that and have enjoyed the fact that they could come in and have a cup of coffee and shoot the breeze and maybe do a little business besides. And she has been able to shift gears and do the right thing. And so I have every confidence that between Becky and Barb and Mindy, they will figure it out and serve our veterans well. I just want to point out a couple of other things. I see Terry Fawcett's on the call. He was anyway. Are you still there, Terry? Maybe
I'm here.
I don't want to pick on you, Terry, but I know you have followed this thing and been involved with the state and testified on the county's behalf and your association's behalf. And I just wanted to give a shout out to you also for kind of taking the bull by the horns and making probation an integral part of the whole solution here for the people in Pine County. So do you have any thoughts?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the kind comments. I sent out an email this morning. We were on a conference call with the deputy commissioner, and our lobbyist spoke up. And while we didn't get funding accomplished at the end of the session, there is optimism going into the special session. And there was the letter hasn't been sent yet, but there's a joint letter between Senator Limmer, Senator Latz, and then Chair Mariani in support of the funding. So I think there's some good momentum in the right direction. Everybody understands that during the COVID time that the budgets are tough and nobody planned for this. But ultimately, people got to be. Some of the good things I've heard during the day that I testified from legislators were, you can pay now or pay later, and that's not just economics. That's with staff and resources in the community. If you don't fund the community supervision, then even more burden falls on the prisons, which are overtaxed for staff and COVID issues as it is. And so hopefully we continue to build that momentum and we get something done here for the good of all of our communities, and so that doesn't fall on the counties. So we'll continue to do my part. I'm the president until the end of June, so at least I'll still be on the executive board for another year, but I'll have still hopefully a good voice here for another month or so. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we're okay to move on.
Mr. Chair, if I could just summarize then, so we're all clear. So our plan will be to have the courthouse open June 1st for walk-in public traffic. Employees who can work from home will continue to work from home. And the North Pine Government Center will do by appointment only with a focus on the veterans. And I have had some communication with the city of Pine City with regard to when they would want access to their city hall. And so we'll continue to have that conversation and potentially be sure that we accommodate their needs with opening the building to walk-in traffic. And then if we have to potentially limit that to the main floor, we can certainly do that since HHS still is operating with those waivers, and that seems to be working along with appointments as necessary for HHS.
Thank you. People must think this meeting was going to get done at 11:30, so my phone's buzzing. Anyway, yes, David, I think you're spot on the recap. So let's move on to commissioner updates. Nemadji, one watershed, one plan. Matt, you're muted.
Nemadji was canceled for May, scheduled for June, but our plan is basically done. We're just kind of going to put some finishing touches on that.
All right, thanks. East Central Solid Waste, we did have a meeting. We're just plugging along. There is a tremendous amount of waste that has come in when people have been staying home more. They've seen the volume from the same amount of households has increased tremendously. And I think I can understand that. Regional Library, Josh?
Yeah, we did have a meeting. They're working on the new library in Cambridge is done. That's where headquarters is going to move. They're having some problems getting furniture and some other stuff, as you can imagine. But they're scheduled, I think, hopefully sometime in June. They're going to try to get in there. I think I got an email, and almost every branch is available for curbside pickup, or will be here shortly. There was like one or two that was still not doing it. They were trying to get some stuff figured out to do it. But I think as early as this week, maybe next week, every branch should be available for curbside delivery. And it sounds like that's going over really, really well. They're getting a lot of participation in it. So they're doing a ton of online library cards, and just it's been going pretty decent. They shifted a lot of funding over to digital materials, and that's kind of a fluid thing we've been doing a lot of with the library. But obviously in this state of what we're doing and dealing with, electronic materials or digital stuff is the big trend. So they've been focusing a lot of purchases on that. They did receive some grants to purchase even more, and or there was some stuff that they let the money up, not as restrictive to use it on digital. It was supposed to be used for something else, which don't quote me, I can't remember exactly what it is, but that obviously isn't going to work in this pandemic. So they unrestricted it to use it on digital material. So as far as that goes, they were looking at some plans to maybe start reopening too, but I think we got another meeting coming up here. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Chemical Health Coalition.
Yes, I attended that meeting there earlier last week. Pretty quiet and quick meeting. Talked a little bit about educational seminars that are coming up yet this summer. Also need some more of these one-on-one interviews of tobacco use amongst teens. We're working on those yet. Then we went over and there was talk a little bit, but it's going to be a quiet summer for setting up the booths, for the informational booths at the fairs. Seeing all of those have been put on hold this year, so there won't be much there. Then other than that, East Central was looking at ways to help recognize their graduates. I believe it was last Thursday they received their caps and gowns. Then from there they paraded through the city of Ascove and through the city of Sandstone afterwards to get a little recognition for themselves for graduating high school, because they got a little short change like all the other graduates this year. So that was about it for that.
Thanks. So, John, I read they passed the 21 tobacco bill at the state. So did they talk about, we had that kind of lined up for the county. It kind of seems would be redundant.
Yeah, I think it's going to sit back and let it go now.
Okay, all right. Soil and Water Conservation District.
Yes, we had a meeting on May 13th. And then I'll back up to, like you're saying, opening. I think Dave reached out to them and put them in the driver's seat on how opening when they're comfortable and let them make their decision on that too. I think
okay,
that was correct. So,
real
yeah.
good. Thank you.
So the tree program was crazy this year. Sold out, went really well, better than it's ever done. Their drill has done 400 acres, and there's a long waiting list for their drill. And it was pretty much a general meeting after that, what's their business. But the interesting thing, or I don't know if it's interesting, but their water tech resigned. They're going to be resigning as of May 22nd. And she took a job with Douglas County, Wisconsin. So what I wanted to just bring up is, I know we talked about it in the past, we had, I think, a couple different times about bringing the water plant back into the county. And I don't know. I'm just going to throw that out to the rest of the board, because now is as good a time as any if you want to think about that, or if we want to. I'm not saying we have that discussion just spontaneous now, but maybe by the next board meeting, maybe we can, if everybody thinks about it, we can decide if we want to do that. And just for the background on that, I think we pass through, it's like $13,500 or $14,000, which we match. I'm not sure the exact number, but it runs, I think it comes up to about somewhere between 26 and 28,000 that we put into that program right now. And I don't know. It's just a time to talk. I don't know. I'm not trying to sabotage anything. I know we've talked about it before, so I thought I better come back and let you guys know what's going on there. But with the one watershed, one plan thing that's going to be developing in the county, I think we're going to have a lot more interaction at the county level also. And I think, Steve, what do you think about that? Now, Mr. Chair, I don't know. I think it's worth a discussion.
Yes, I think we should have the discussion. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it's going to all play out, but we are nearing the point when we're going to have at least 2, possibly 3 water plant or one watershed, one plan districts done. Yeah, we're gonna end up with 4, but we're gonna have a couple of them done here real soon.
Oh, yeah.
We're just waiting for the public hearing process to be over, and our plan, your plan is done. Josh, Snake Rivers, you know, they've kind of been doing it for 20 years, so, I mean, I think they gotta organize the way they're gonna organize, but I think we're close. I mean, I don't know. I think
No,
I think
I
pretty
just-
soon we got all the water covered in Pine County.
I have no idea how to speak to what level of interplay we're gonna have in those programs, and I think we'd have to have somebody like Caleb and Kelly and everybody, and we may have to just have a quick committee of the
Yep.
whole meeting or something, I don't know, but.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could just add a couple of thoughts on that discussion with the water plan and how we want to do our water planning. I think there's general agreement that as the One Watershed, One plans come into play, the single comprehensive county-wide water plan is going to go away. And in January, I believe it was January, we applied to Bowser for an extension of our current water plan so that we don't have to update it. And so I think we may have the last comprehensive water plan that we're ever going to have, and because of the One Watershed, One plans. So it certainly seems opportune to have a conversation about how do we want to do water planning going forward. I think in the past, when we've had these conversations, the SWCD probably rightly has gotten concerned about the funding aspect. And so maybe as we do it this time, we need to start thinking about the SWCD funding as a separate piece, right? There is some money that attaches to the water plan, but we maybe we should start thinking about how should the SWCD be funded? We know there's been some efforts at the legislature to get levy authority. The county board has given some support of those efforts. This session, they appear not to be successful. I'm not hearing that it's going to be a special session item, so that seems to be dead for this session, which means that we're going to have at least a year or two more of county funding for the SWCD anyways. So maybe just having that conversation separate from the actual planning would be helpful.
Yeah. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I forgot to add probably the most important part of the water plan. I think, I'm going from memory here, but the state statute says the county is responsible for the water plan.
Right.
And even if we delegate it off like we have to the SWCD, it's still our responsibility to make sure it's being taken care of. We don't relinquish our responsibility by having somebody else do our water plan. So that's why it's another important part of what we're gonna do. So
I learned that lesson of responsibility of duty in basic training or infantry school when I got a buddy to take my guard duty and he forgot to show up. My name was on the list. I was still responsible.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can just chime in, we did have a supervisor training several years ago that really drove home that exact point, that you can delegate authority, you cannot delegate responsibility. And I think that has been a mantra that we have tried to maintain. And I don't think it was coincidental that our instructor was a former naval officer, because I think that is a military concept that has a lot of applicability.
Yep. We'll move on. Lakes and Pines, we had a meeting yesterday. They're doing some very, very great work right now with food distribution. Becky has worked with them and reached out with Mille Lacs Band, who has gone through some really tough times right now with their casinos being shut down and with food support. And so I appreciate the work, Becky, and appreciate what Lakes and Pines has done also. And then AMC Blue Ribbon, I got appointed to that meeting, and really what it's all about is kind of the same thing. I think we talked about it once already, as we're doing in the county, is trying to come up with lessons learned and how we can come out of this thing being more efficient and better. And one of the big things we've appreciated about this are the waivers that were granted for a lot of public health, health and human services areas. And I believe Hennepin County had identified 45 different waivers that they've been able to have and work with. We were very disappointed that the legislative session ended with apparently no extension of those waivers, except maybe some federal waivers that will help us in WIC and buy us another amount of time. But I am hoping tomorrow I will find out that they have cooked up a special deal to extend some of these waivers when they come back June 12th or before that. And I don't know, but it just seems like it is such a no-brainer to be able to work with the waivers without endangering anybody's well-being. And some of the waivers are just the way we operate business nowadays. The electronic signature thing, the being able to check on people using electronic devices instead of meeting them and staring them in the face. They've been able to, people have told me they're able to, instead of checking on people once a month, checking on them once a week, which is so much more efficient and better for everybody. And so we are all, I think, disappointed in that news, and hopefully we can make it better in the end.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We've circled a little bit back to the COVID response with the waiver piece. And there was one comment I forgot to make, and that is the county board had waived penalties for property taxes paid late. And so Kelly has some preliminary data that she can share if you're interested in seeing kind of where we stand.
I am very interested in hearing that, Kelly.
All right, so I am trying to get it brought up here. You guys see the table?
We see your screen, but it looks blank.
Oh. Let's see. Maybe I'm gonna try to take it.
You see your cursor moving around.
There we go.
Okay, super. So can you see the whole table now?
Yep.
Okay, so this shows you a comparison of where we're at as of end of business day yesterday, from this year to 2019 to 2018. So you can see based on what the total levies are, where as of end of day yesterday, we're at 52.3% collected, which is down from the previous years. One caveat that I think is skewing that a little bit is just the timing of May 15th. May 15th was on a Friday, and so then we only had one business day after that to put in any payments that were mailed, where like last year May 15th was we had a lot more time to get payments entered. So as of right now, we're at 52.3% collected. I'm going to pull these numbers again and include them. Dave will have them in the Friday update so that you can get a better picture of where we're actually comparing. Yesterday we had a huge amount of mail that came in, and so I think that we're probably going to end up trending pretty much right on target where we have been from previous years for collections. I do know, though, from hearing from some business owners that they are taking advantage of the penalty waiver, those businesses that have been really hard hit. but for the most part, it's not going to have a huge financial impact.
Thank you, Kelly. That's makes me feel a lot much better.
Super. Now I got to figure out how to stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before you adjourn, I do have other when you get to that, so.
Okay. I do have one more meeting I'm going to report on, and that's the Central Minnesota Council on Aging. We met and had a meeting that we needed to. It was a continuation of a meeting that had gone on a couple weeks ago, and it had to do with the numbers of meals that the Mille Lacs band had requested. And so then we came back and with some really good work from the department, through the governor's office, through AMC, through Becky, we got the request kind of narrowed down a little bit. We still had one person on that board, and that's fine, that voted against it, but the sheer numbers of meals that Catholic Charities has provided in the last 2 months, the numbers in my mind are astronomical. They went from an average month of 26,000 meals to at 1 month they had 93,000 meals. It looks like they're going to settle in at about 73,000. Go from 26,000 to 73,000. That's a tremendous increase. So they're working hard trying to get these meals out the door and get them delivered. These are home delivered meals. So, and they've a lot of them, what they've done is gone to these frozen meals. So they prepare these meals, they get them boxed up and packaged up, deliver them to Aunt Susie, who then can put them in the freezer and have, I think there's 14 days of meals there, or 10 days or whatever. So anyway, it's a great program. They're really targeting the most nutritionally deficient people in central Minnesota. So the people that are not able to get food any other way, basically, due to whatever reason. So that's it, Matt. You had something else?
I do. So this is going to be in reference to our land committee and our public land.
Yep.
A month or so ago, I had a communication from Greg, our county forester, and he ran across another. The general purpose of this is, I know I reached out to you guys sometime in the past about coming up with a deer stand ordinance or something. Yeah, thank you, David,
Yep.
for the picture. But so anyway, he ran across this, and this is a piece of county property, and we do not have a deer stand ordinance, and we really do not have a, hey, what can you do on our public land? So there's a lot of people today that have, bobcats, skidsters or whatever, and they build stands and they just make roads and clear lanes. So I'm mostly making this comment because we're working on this right now in our land committee, but I want to get a public notice out there that this kind of activity with, where you come in and just plow a road to your deer stand and stake claim to a piece of public property as your own hunting spot that's not what we look for. We want people to hunt on our land. That they're more than welcome, but we need to establish some kind of rule for what they can do to the landscape. And then I think some kind of rule of how big they can build a deer stand. And we have lots of pictures of these that are in much better shape than this one and a lot bigger. They're like a cabin on stilts that are out there. So anyway, I just want to put that on all the commissioners' radar. So we're working on something like that, but we want people to hunt here and I don't know.
Yes,
That's it.
That's not acceptable on public land. Especially the road thing. Holy
Yeah.
mackerel. I don't know who would think that was a good idea.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So isn't there some kind of rule or law or something on state land? Could we just simply adopt something like that? Because I didn't think you could put permanent stands on state land and or obviously alter the ground or something like that. So if it would be something we just simply married that policy or ordinance or whatever up to ours, I think that makes the most sense.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have reached out to the local conservation officers and I have received copies of those, or at least the statute numbers, not the statutes themselves, and I relayed them to our committee people. So we'll have those in front of us when we do look at this. And there are different things at the state because they have wildlife management areas that have a different set of rules than state forests, but they do not allow permanent the enclosed structures. They just allow platforms at 6 foot. I don't know, I'm going from memory, a small platform at 6 foot or something. But we'll figure it out.
Okay, thank you. Anything else come before the board?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to back up here quite a ways. I've been trying to interject. I don't know if you guys have a hard time hearing me or what, but I really had one question on soil and water and the water plan, and maybe it's a question for Matt. I don't know, but I guess I'm just curious what role soil and water has in the one watershed, one plan. And as we move forward, that's, I understand that's going to kind of supplant our water plan. So what role will soil and water have in that going forward? You guys that are on those, maybe you can answer that for me.
I'll take my stab at it, Steve. I think the role soil and water is going to take is the implementation. When the one watershed, one plan board says we need to get to the source point of the phosphorus going into the Snake River, then if it's pointed at a feedlot or whatever in Pine County, then Pine County Soil and Water will work on a plan to help mitigate that. That'd be one way.
So they would still be the bad.
Pardon me?
Can I? They would still be the bad guys then.
Well, no, they're kind of the good guys because they're the guys, the one watershed, one plan board would probably be the people that said this needs to be cleaned up. And a lot of these are not controversial things. The farm has changed hands. There's one in Pine City Township. The farm has changed hands twice now, from a dairy operation to just a farmstead. Everybody wants it cleaned up. So Soil and Water is trying to get the funds to help clean it up. So in that case, they would be the good guys for the new landowners and for the environment.
Okay, Mr. Chair. Okay. Can I say something?
Yep. Go ahead, Josh.
Sorry, I had to step and grab a phone call real quick, but from what I understood is you're trying to figure out, who's the bad guy, who's not the bad guy, who's here to help. Well, Snake River Management or Snake River Watershed Management Board right now currently operates on a one watershed, one plan. It's essentially the same thing. We've been doing it for 20 years. Nobody is per se the bad guy. So you have a impaired area. There's like different levels of priorities on these watersheds. So what they do is if you're in a impaired and you're right on the river or whatever, you're at a higher priority, you have a better chance of getting funded. All it is a funding stream. With one watershed, one plan, the money is substantially more than what we've ever had. So what it's going to give things like Soil and Water or the One Watershed, One Plan team is to go in there and say, hey, Mr. Farmer or Mr., I have a junkyard right on the river. You're not going in there giving them a citation. You're not going in there telling them they can't operate. You're going in there with hopefully some solutions that most landowners are willing to comply with. Some are not, some are. Sometimes, depending on the level, depending on how bad they want it cleaned up, there's some buy-in on the landowner. Sometimes there's not. I know we've done some where we really wanted this done in the worst way, so we funded the whole thing. And all this is going to do is give a lot more tools and a lot better response and a lot better. I mean, money is the object. Where, everybody wants to do, most people want to do the right thing. Water is important, but it all comes down to money. So with the state funding this at very high levels, it should help a lot. If you go in there and say, hey, Steve, you got to clean up your feedlot, it's going to cost $100,000. Yeah, we'll throw 10 grand in it. You're going to say, yeah, right. See you, bye. If you go in there and say, hey, we really want to improve the water, let's do this, and this. It might be better for your cattle or your livestock. It might be better for the water, the environment, everything. And hey, we really want this done. You're a willing, great landowner. We're going to fund the whole thing. Well, great, perfect. Let's move on. And or you got to buy in $5,000, or you got to just
in about 5 minutes, Dennis.
you got to
For the meeting now,
take
I'm leaving.
responsibility. So should be a good thing.
No,
So Josh,
Anything
can I
else?
ask you a question?
Yep.
Josh? So,
Yep, go ahead.
in the 1 year over there, yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Steve.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So
Yep.
If you're one watershed, one plan over there, if they see that there's something that needs to be whatever, be a feedlot, whatever it might be, so then do they draw up a plan? Do they say, look, Soil and Water, we want you to do this or do that?
And it's not
And do they-
necessarily always soil and water. It might be environmental resources or land, it might be the land department of the county. It might be such and such. It might be the landowner reaching out to somebody saying, hey, I heard there's money available. My fence is junk that's along the river. Can you help me fix the fence? It could be a cattle crop, whatever.
Do they appropriate money then for an entity to do that?
So
Yeah.
you create a budget, and then you kind of have certain things. But I know ours, we've got grants before, and you modify it as it needs to be or amend it, however you want to say that. If you find a willing landowner, that's not necessarily a high priority, so your funding stream is a little different. We talked to Bowser about modifying that. They approve it, and then we move forward. So.
Okay, so there is funding. There would be funding that would go to, let's say, like Soil and Water to do what they would need to do.
Yep.
Yep.
Definitely.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep.
You bet.
Anything else? Well, I think we set the record for the longest video Pine County meeting ever. So I don't know if that's something to be proud of, but we made it. If there's no other business, thank you, everybody. We'll call the meeting adjourned. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Chair Holland?